Hey now, and welcome to China Cat Chat.
A podcast for deadheads, dreamers, and lovers of all things weird and wonderful.
We're your hosts, Todd and Michelle, coming to you with stories from the heart of the Grateful Dead universe.
From parking lot tales and concert memories to deep dives into lyrics, legacy, and long, strange trips, we're all on.
This is where we shine a light on the people keeping the dead alive in fresh, creative, and soulful ways.
In every other issue, we sit down with someone who inspires us artists, fans, family, and fellow travelers.
To talk music, memory, meaning, and maybe even a little magic. So tune in, turn on.
And let's get into it.
Cool. Well, today's guest is someone who feels like family to us because, well, she kind of is.
That's right. If you caught our last interview with my sister Elizabeth, you may remember her mentioning a longtime friend and fellow deadhead from Durango, and that's Alice.
Alice has been on this long, strange trip for quite some time, catching shows all over the US, across the pond in Europe, and even down in Mexico with us a few times.
And a couple of bolder shows on top of that. She's got some beautiful stories, a serious concert resume, and even a very unexpected Bob Weir story. Something involving flag football, I believe.
Okay. The four of us, Alice, Elizabeth, Michelle, and I, have made some amazing memories on the road together. So today we're beyond happy to bring her into the China Cat Chat circle.
Let's dive in. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Michelle and Todd. Thank you for having me today.
We're so excited.
Very.
So tell me, do you remember, the first show? Is this when you first got on the bus? And around what year was that?
My first show was at the University of Maryland in College Park, Maryland in 1981. And I would say I did not get on the bus my
Okay.
first show.
Okay.
I actually went with my boyfriend at the time. His name is Stephen Terrell. We called him Ducky. And Ducky was my boyfriend in high school in the first couple years of college. And he was the one that initially turned me on to the Grateful Dead. Um, I did not like the first show. I thought the sound was terrible. I couldn't understand Jerry Garcia's lyrics. I actually, was young and naive and was a little bit intimidated by all the hippies and the tie-dyed and, just all the twirlers. So I did not get on the bus my first concert. And then my second concert was at the Nassau Coliseum in Nassau, New York, the same year in 1981. And the same thing, wasn't real impressed with the East Coast Deadheads. I think they're loud, they're aggressive, they're obnoxious. The whole time during the concert, I had a guy from New York behind me yelling, Garcia, Garcia. I mean, the whole concert. So did not get on the bus the first couple shows. My
Okay.
third show later that summer, Ducky and I took a road trip out west. We
Okay.
were in the car, we were driving, and we were going to go to see national parks and camp, but of course he scheduled it around a couple Grateful Dead shows. So
Sure.
my third show was at the Maynard Downs in Austin, Texas,
Wow.
on July the 4th, 1981.
Oh,
That is when I think I really started embracing the music, the fans. I'll never forget they sang Jack Straw leaving Texas, 4th day of July, and it was the 4th of July. And then we made our way out west and saw some other shows in California, I think maybe even one in Phoenix. And I started really appreciating it more. I think I really started embracing the West Coast Deadheads more because of the mellow vibe, and they weren't as aggro and aggressive as the East Coast.
Yeah. But that was like a mini tour. I mean, you saw several shows on that run, it sounds like.
We did, but we also, it was more about going to see national parks and camping and stuff. But since
Yeah.
he was such a deadhead, he, scheduled it around it. So,
Very
my
cool.
love for them grew on that trip. Okay. And that is probably when I did get on the bus.
Interesting.
Very
Was
cool.
it just the one show that was on that trip, or were there several shows?
There were several shows. We went to the a Warfield show. I think we went to, I can't really remember, but I think we went to one in Phoenix, Arizona too.
Oh,
And then one or two in the Bay Area.
wow.
Very
And
That's a
cool.
trip. That's a trip.
yes. And then that was in 1981. And then I transferred to the University of Colorado in 1982. And we broke up at that point because he was living in North Carolina and I was in Colorado. And I started seeing more shows at McNichols Arena, at Red Rocks.
Right.
And that was during the early 80s.
Yeah. Then you were truly hooked.
I truly was.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Love it.
All right. So, I mean, I was going to ask another question about the year, but that is the same year that you kind of got on the bus. So that's good. So let me ask then, because I mean, I sort of know the answer to this question, but not really. And Michelle, I don't know how much you know about it too, but our next question is, I mean, we want to know how you did meet Bobby.
Okay.
Because
Well,
we know it's an interesting story. Michelle hinted it's about flag football, what it's all about. And
right.
so how did
Well,
that happen? So
I,
curious.
I was in Boulder from 1982 to I believe 86.
Yeah.
And then I traveled in Europe, not seeing the dad. I just traveled in Europe. And then in 1987, I moved to Mill Valley, Marin County in California. And that is, if you know, that's where Bob Weir lives. And I didn't move there because of that. I had a job and I moved out there also following another boyfriend. And one day I was working out at Tamalpais High School. I was running, jump roping, push up, doing all this stuff. And I looked out in the center of the field and I see two guys throwing the football around. And the more I looked at it, I'm like, that looks like Bob Weir, you know? I mean, I'd been to a number of shows, so I knew what he looked like. And after I'd worked out, my boyfriend, Dave Kennedy, came and picked me up. And I said, I think that's Bob Weir out there throwing the football. And he got out of the car being a lot more, I was a little too shy to go up and say something to him. He got out of the car, started throwing the football around with him. I was sitting there watching them. They finished playing. We all sat on the bleachers and we started talking. And Bob said that he was trying to form this men's flag football team and asked if Dave could join because he was a really good athlete. And he was honored. He said, of course I would. And Bob said, well, I would like to put you guys on as my guest next week at the Berkeley Theater. And so we were like ecstatic, we thought we would just get tickets or whatever. Well, we go the next week and show up and we had backstage passes and really good seats. And we were young and naive and we went backstage not knowing anybody. And they had this huge spread of all this organic food and fruit and vegetables and open bar, and we were our eyes were just like, we were in awe.
Wow.
And we had really good seats. And so that was the beginning of our friendship with Weir. And, Dave continued to play football with them. And we hung out with them a lot in Mill Valley. And then I believe it was, I think I've made some notes here. I believe it was 1993. And we did go to Europe in 1990.
Okay.
Or I went with a girlfriend and same thing. We had a trip planned where we had a Eurail pass, but I was the deadhead. She wasn't. And I ended up seeing 6 shows over there in Essen, Germany, 2 in Paris and 3 in Wembley Stadium in London. And
Wow.
I dragged her along and I converted her to
You convert? Yeah, I was gonna say, did you convert?
actually, that's Gina in this picture.
Oh,
She actually ended up dating Weir. So she dated him for a year. And
Can you show us that one more time a little
yeah,
closer?
let's get a close up of that picture here.
can you see that?
That's so fun.
That is great.
So where was that taken?
This was in Essen, Germany.
Essen, Germany.
Actually, I think it was Dusseldorf because that's where we stayed, but the concert was in Essen, which was, just right outside of Dusseldorf.
That is great, Alice.
That is so fun. What a great story.
Yeah. So that was Europe in 1990. And then in this picture, this is not a really great picture because it's indoors, but that's a picture of me and Weir in this hotel room. And this is in Cal Expo in Sacramento. And this is the night, he knew I knew a lot about football and sports. This is the night he asked me, he said, would you be the commissioner of our flag football league. And that required, putting the schedule, getting the refs, the booking the fields. And I said, you know what, I'll think about it. And he said, well, in exchange, I will give you an all access laminate pass. And, how could you turn that down?
And you're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, and that was 1993 and 1994. So he gave me an all access laminate pass, and I was commissioner for 2 years. And I, of course, went to see lots of shows.
Yeah.
So
I,
does that type
I
of pass get you into any show everywhere, no matter?
any show anywhere. I think it might be a little bit different now, but back then it was a lot more relaxed, and
Yeah.
there wasn't as many crazy fans. And backstage I got to know a lot of people. I knew a lot of the roadies, just a lot of people, and so I was a familiar face. And that's the one time that I met Jerry Garcia. And I believe that was
Wow.
in 92 or 93, and it was in a Miami show. And I got to talk to him. Of course, I was shy and didn't know anything to say to him other than, how are you? Nice to meet you. Didn't ask him any questions. And then I met him again in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, at a show there.
Wow.
So, so anyway, that opened up the door for me to go to a lot more shows. I went to a 6-night run in Madison Square Garden, and traveled around, saw him in Atlanta, So anyway, but
Lots of
after
shows. I mean, is there like an average number with a lanyard like that you would go to? Like, do you think you saw 50 shows a year or like,
it's really hard to say. Probably, I
yeah,
think overall, including the Dead and Co., I've probably seen well over 200 shows, maybe 250.
wow. Yeah,
Wow.
I saw Rat Dog. I went to Jamaica and saw Rat Dog and a lot of other. So anyway.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so let me ask you this. How do you think the music and the trip has changed you? Like, I mean, you've been to a lot of shows, you've had this awesome experience. How do you
Yes.
think this journey has changed you?
Oh, it's changed me a lot. It's just I made so many nice friends. I love that about the music too, that it blends so many different people from so many different backgrounds. I've met great friends. I just think the music just emanates kindness and happiness, and I love that.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, I just think it's opened my eyes to so many different types of people, and acceptance. So it's changed my life a lot. It really
that's
has.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
I do kind of consider myself, I don't know if it's a closet deadhead, but like I don't wear tie-dyes. I don't have stickers on my car. I don't have any posters, but I am a true deadhead.
You're
Yeah,
incognito.
Yes. And there's no real reason, rhyme or reason for that. It's just that, I just don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you love them without all that stuff, and you don't
You're
need all
right.
that,
Yes.
right? It's
And
just
I just love the music. And also, I don't need drugs or alcohol to enhance the experience. Not saying that I haven't done that, but overall, I have been to more shows sober
Yeah.
because I genuinely love the music,
yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Love
And
that.
I think the music combines, rock, blues, jazz, country, and it's just a genre blending, and I love that.
yeah,
I love that.
for sure.
Okay, so with that in mind, here's the question probably most any deadhead would hate. So sorry. Favorite favorite song and why? We all
Okay.
and there's no way I can answer that question because I don't.
That is a hard one.
It is a hard one.
But I will say I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan,
Mhm.
and I do like all the songs that the Dead do of Dylan, like
Yeah.
Queen Jane, Masterpiece. They used to do Maggie's Farm. I don't know if the Dead and Co. have done Maggie's Farm.
Mhm.
All Along the Watchtower. That is a Bob Dylan song.
Yeah.
You
Great
know?
song.
So I do love all those songs, but I can't say that I have one song that is my.
It's hard.
Okay.
I do like Looks Like Rain. I don't know
Okay.
why, because it's slow. It's kind of, I like the lyrics.
Yeah.
Um, I do like a lot of songs now that the Dead and Co. are doing that I didn't particularly like when Garcia was still alive.
Interesting.
like Black Muddy River, Black Peter. A lot of those to me were kind of like, I don't know, sad and dreary and slow songs, maybe because Garcia at that time was doing a lot of heroin and it was just, but I like them now that the Dead and Co. are doing them.
Yeah.
They kind of add a different spin to it and it's a little more upbeat.
Makes sense. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's
Very
fair.
cool.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right. What else
Okay.
we have
So
now?
do you think there is a show where there was a time where you felt like a spiritual, experience, or the show itself was just transformational, like it just took you to another place?
Well, probably several of them. Okay. Probably the Maynard Downs one was really what was the key that kind of opened my eyes and I got on the bus. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Because it wasn't the East. I didn't like the first two East Coast shows I saw, and we were kind of moving west, and I liked the different energy. And so that one, I think I saw a Frost Amphitheater show back in the late 80s that was amazing. A small group of people. It was almost like a backyard concert, and a really, you know, I guess it was a spiritual experience.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For
The
sure.
show, the show you saw in Austin, I can just imagine the total vibe change, really,
Yeah.
from what you're saying, how the first two or three that you went to versus then going to Austin. That had to have been a major vibe change. So I can see that.
Right, right. And then, more recently, the sphere, you know, that is a spiritual
Yeah.
and transformational experience in itself, you
Yeah,
know.
Yeah.
it is awe-inspiring for sure.
Yes.
Tell us.
And
Sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
you go.
I was just going to move on there. Sorry. So tell us about, friends made along the way, how that happens, if it happens while, you're standing in line and you meet someone, you're standing just maybe in the lot at Shakedown or something. Tell us just about some friends you've made and how those friendships were made, and if you're still friends with those folks.
Oh, very much so. And lots of people in the lot, lots of people backstage too.
Yeah.
Lots of friends from, I have a really good girlfriend who lives in London who's a huge Deadhead. Well, you met Morton and Thorstein, and I've known
Yes.
them for years, and they're from Norway. I met them
You met
backstage.
them on, oh, they were backstage. Okay.
Yeah, they're friends and family of Weir.
Mm.
And that's one reason, the Dead brings so many people together from so many parts of the country or whatever, the world. And that's one reason why I've always over the years like to be sober, because I want to talk and interact with people because I don't see them on a regular basis and do run into them at shows. So
Yeah.
that's another reason you always wanted to be sober.
Great
Yeah.
point. Yes.
But
Right.
yes, I just had a girlfriend who I've known for years. She's works for the State Department in Washington, D.C., and she's turning 60 later this summer. I'm going to go to Nashville and celebrate her 60th birthday, and I met her through the Dead,
That's
Claudia.
Very
So
cool.
I do keep in contact with a lot of my friends that I've made,
yeah.
over the years.
That's awesome.
Very
That's
cool.
awesome. The connections just continue and you keep nurturing them, and the music brings you back together.
Exactly, exactly. And I love it.
That's
Love
awesome. So
it.
tell me about is there been any kind of outstanding, I know you've seen a lot, but like has there ever been like any outstanding like miracle that somebody gave to somebody that was just really cool, or just some sort of kindness that you experienced along the way that was just kind of like, wow.
Oh, a number of times. I've seen lots of people, get handed free tickets. For a while, years ago, Weir's like assistants used to go out last minute and hand out tickets, and you could witness that. And I think his daughter does that to this day.
Yeah,
I've made a couple of people's, I've gifted or miracle tickets before too.
that's awesome.
It's nice because there's just so much kindness in the whole community.
Well, and I think that's why we wanted to do this newsletter to kind of keep spreading some kindness and, connection and just keep nurturing the community because it is such an amazing group of people.
It really is. And it's nice, like at the Sphere, to see all the different generations there too, parents with their children and, even grandparents with their grandkids. So
Yeah.
it's really nice.
It's kind of far out for sure.
It
Yeah.
is, and I think what's amazing about the band is they have achieved such massive popularity without being in the mainstream. Well, especially before the Sphere,
Yeah.
without being in the mainstream radio and marketing, you
Hmm.
know. And now it's kind of turned a little bit because with their residency at the Sphere, but it is 2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's what I guess I've always kind of been the black sheep of my family, or just a different free spirit, and I think that's what's attracted me to the Grateful Dead too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, that kind of dovetails in here. The next question I think we were going to ask is just the evolution that you've seen, I'll say from the old days of the Grateful Dead that you started seeing versus now Dead and Company. Do you? This is going to be a hard question. Do you prefer one versus the other? Is this how have you seen the scene change from Grateful Dead shows now to Dead and Company shows, and then all the other shoot offs that you went to in between?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable with the times. I'm just glad they're carrying on the music, and the community. I think John Mayer is amazing, for him to, he's an amazing guitarist, for him to learn the whole repertoire of the Grateful Dead music. And he's not trying to be Jerry, he's being John,
Right.
and so I think I'm fine with the transformation and the evolution of where they are now. And, it's a little bit, they cater to a lot of younger people now too,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And they are more in the mainstream now
Yeah.
than they were years ago,
Yeah.
with a little more marketing and just, the residency at the Sphere, things, costing a lot more money, selling a lot more merchandise, you know, you see, Grateful Dead shirts now at Target and stuff like that. But, that's okay.
That's okay.
Okay. I
Yeah,
mean, it's been 60 years coming. So,
Yeah.
exactly. They deserve it.
right.
They earned it.
Exactly.
They
But
have earned it.
I do
Yeah.
think it's amazing how it's been just kind of just the whole thread of, from the beginning, like, they allowed the tapers, but there wasn't that emphasis of the marketing, kind of almost avoiding it. And now, as we are 60 years later, and just how our society is and social media, that it has evolved, but it's interesting to watch the trajectory, right?
Yep. Yep. But I don't mind it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
Yep. Yep.
that is.
So tell me, do you have a favorite band member?
I don't. I'm not, you know, I guess I've always been friends with Weir,
Yeah.
Yep.
Bobby.
Yep.
So, but you know what? I like them all,
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've never been just a Bobette, we used to call them.
The Bobbets.
You mean like my sister?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I guess because I was just always platonic friends with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
that's why, you know, back in the day, I really liked Brent when
Yeah.
he did the keyboard, and I was lucky to see in 90, I believe it was 90 and 92 when Bruce Hornsby toured with them.
Oh,
Wow.
right.
I love that.
Very.
He was amazing. He had a really amazing relationship with Garcia, back and forth, the piano and the guitar. And then I saw Branford Marsalis with him too on a New Year's Eve and Madison Square Garden, which was amazing too.
Wow.
And I believe he toured with them a little bit, you know, 4 or 5 or 6 other shows, but I just saw that one in Madison Square Garden. So,
Very
so
cool.
I don't think I have a favorite member.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
That's fair because they're
that's
all good.
Yep.
I think we just have a couple more here. One that I'm interested to know is if you have a favorite city that you've seen them in. Best city to see the band, we'll say.
Oh gosh. Um, That's tough too.
I know
Okay.
it is tough.
Um,
It's like favorite song.
yeah, and probably, I would lean more towards San Francisco because it's their
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a lot of fun at Shoreline, but it just, with the traffic, it became such a nightmare to get there. Um, Shoreline, I think Cal Expo, which is in Sacramento, was always fun too.
Yeah.
And then, Elizabeth and I went a couple years ago to see him at the Hollywood Bowl, and that was pretty special,
Yeah.
Right.
you know. And then there's Red Rocks.
And then there's Red Rocks.
They're too big for Red Rocks now. So, but back in the day, that was always special.
Yeah, for sure.
True.
Well, we've seen some pretty amazing ones, like my poster back here of Boulder, I have to say.
Boulder's a great place to see it.
It, Bol-
Yeah.
how could I not include Boulder in all the Colorado shows? Because I think they love Colorado.
I
Yeah.
think they do
Well,
too.
how could you not?
Exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me, what would you say to the young up and coming Deadhead? Like, what's the advice you would give somebody who's, up and coming and just really embracing the music, but new to the scene? And what would you have any advice or
Well,
maybe
that's tough
wisdom?
too, because I'm not one to push the Grateful Dead on anyone. I think
Yeah.
they have enough fans that, if you don't like them, you don't like them. You either don't,
Yeah.
maybe to, look back on some of their older stuff too, and to do a little research on how they got started and their history with, the blues and, country and folk and how it evolved into, with Garcia into the Grateful Dead, and then how they are now as Dead and Co.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I mean, their songs, the lyrics are amazing. They have so many references to biblical stuff, to nursery rhymes, to just poetic stuff. I mean, their lyrics are amazing. You
Yeah.
know, historical stuff. You
Yeah,
know,
agreed. Yeah, that's great advice. There's so much information now that's so easy to dig into to do historical, deep dives like this. And so that's a great idea. That's what we're hoping to do with China Cat Chat. It's just kind of each time we have a little piece, maybe a little history, some artwork in there, and
right,
just give people that taste of here's something that you may or may not know. And so it's
right.
it's interesting to do that. Very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome to be able to share some of this. Let me ask you this one last question that's kind of off the cuff here. What is your thoughts about the 60 anniversary coming up here in the next month and a half, maybe?
Yes. Well, I'm really excited to be sharing it with you guys.
Yay.
Thank you. We are too.
We are too.
Um, the Golden Gate Park is not one of my favorite places to see,
Okay.
but it is, symbolic, I guess, because that's where they started. Last time I was there was when Bill Graham died. The Dead did a concert there, but I think it's very appropriate because it's their hometown,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm excited about the guests, Billy Strings and Sturgill and even Trey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but most of all, just spending it with my family.
Yes, I know. We can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
It will be
We-
it'll be fantastic.
For sure.
Yes.
Well, we give you a big thanks, Alice, for sharing your heart, your stories, and all your spirit with us today.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we loved it so much. I hope everyone watching loved it as much as we did too.
Yes. And that's it for this episode of China Cat Chat. Thanks for spending a little time with us in the swirl.
If you dig these episodes, help us to spread these vibes, follow the show, share it with some fellow deadheads, drop us a line at chinacatchat.com.
And you can follow along on social too. You'll just find us at China Cat Chat on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter.
Yeah, new episodes, newsletters, they're always just kind of around the corner. They're full of stories, art, music, and magic.
Until next time,
Stay curious.
stay kind.
Keep on trucking.
Inspiration, move me brightly.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
it. Thank you. Thank
I
you
love
so
it.
much. Thank you so much, Alice. We just appreciate you so much.
Of course. Thank you. I
Looking
appreciate
forward,
it.
looking forward to San Francisco.
Yeah, we'll talk before then, though. Okay.
Oh,
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Woohoo.
Tomorrow's Elizabeth's birthday.
It is.
I know. I know.
All right.
All right. I love you guys.
Hey, love you.
Thank you.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye
Love
bye.
you.